Jealousy. Saul's jealousy of David, Part 1. A classic case of how jealousy works can be seen in the story of Saul and David. Saul was king, ruler over the nation. He had everything going for him, and yet jealousy entered, and it seemed to change everything about him. Or did the jealousy merely bring out what was already there inside Saul? What was Saul's initial attitude towards David? That can be found in 1 Samuel 18, verse 1 through 5. After David had finished talking with Saul, Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as himself. From that day, Saul kept David with him, and did not let him return home to his family. And Jonathan made a covenant with David, because he loved him as himself. Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing, and gave it to David, along with its tunic, and even his sword, his bow, and his belt. Whatever mission Saul sent him on, David was so successful that Saul gave him a high rank in the army. This pleased all the troops and Saul's officers as well. Saul's action showed that he had a very positive attitude towards David, to whom he gave a high place in the army. Also, consider his own son's attitude toward David. It was clear that David had royal favor. What changed Saul's attitude? This can be found in 1 Samuel 18, verse 6 through 9. When the men were returning home after David had killed the Philistine, the women came out from all the towns of Israel to meet King Saul, with singing and dancing, with joyful songs, and with timbrels and lyres. As they danced, they sang, "Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands." Saul was very angry. This refrain displeased him greatly. They have credited David with tens of thousands, he thought, but me with only thousands. What more can he get but the kingdom? And from that time on, Saul kept a close eye on David. Why is Saul's attitude such a common human response? The rest of 1 Samuel 18 shows just how damaging Saul's jealousy of David became. It led him to all sorts of deviousness and trickery, and yet none of it worked. The very things that he feared in David became more and more pronounced. Jealousy generates a series of negative emotions: low self-esteem, hatred, suspicion, fear, guilt, and anger. Saul was afraid of David, as mentioned several times in this chapter. He might have been afraid of losing his kingly position, or afraid of David becoming the absolute hero of Israel. But his main source of fear was because the Lord was with David, but had left Saul. Being left by God is reason enough to be afraid, but Saul's fear was aggravated by the fact that the Lord was with David, as we read in verse 12 of chapter 18. Saul was unable to apply to the situation the simple logic of Gamaliel. If this is of human origin, it will fail. But if it is from God, you will not be able to stop it. Acts 5, verse 38 and 39. When the Lord blesses people, There's no point in developing jealousy or seeking their doom. God will continue to bless them. Now, our final questions. However wrong Saul's attitude, why is it relatively easy to understand? What's your immediate attitude to someone you deem could be a threat to your position? Do you surrender everything to the Lord, or do you start plotting a counter strategy?